5 years ago, the gaming community witnessed the rise of one of the finest additions to the boomer shooter genre, even to this day, Doom Eternal. Released as a sequel to Doom 2016, gamers had a hard time deciding whether that was a Doom game. Doom Eternal brought an avalanche of interesting gameplay mechanics. You would have to keep moving and jumping across interestingly built arenas, switching between weapons and weapon modes, using gadgets, landing blood punches, using the chainsaw for ammo, executing glory kills to refill both your health and the blood punch meter, all while fighting a crazy variety of enemy types in their variant attacks. The game was so hectic that your health could fall down to a minimum and you would still come out on top. In terms of story, they expanded on the Slayer's saga as an overpowered character and the lengths to which he will go to protect Earth and obliterate the demons. I would say that most of the story was basically fast-paced, which I didn't necessarily hate because that's the whole philosophy of the game's design. Besides, its length was perfect, as more levels in Doom Eternal's case would make the player fall into a state of routine as they run out of new mechanics and challenges to introduce. The Fortress of Doom was an interesting way of providing the player with a room to breathe between the levels before resuming the playthrough. The soundtrack was phenomenal, and it played a large role in contextualizing the Slayer's ripped interior persona. With the release of its giant of a story DLC, the game's popularity grew to the point where it redefined the genre. You would find a lot of people out there talking about Doom Eternal's amazing game design, often describing it as fun or addictive, which is honestly very true. With that said, there is a dilemma here. At the height of Doom Eternal's success and critical acclaim, how can the developers make something better than that? Because anything similar would be considered a replica, not worthy of a new title's price tag. And we all know what happens when that's overly done. How would they be able to recreate that same atmosphere without sounding more of the same? Enter the unholy prequel, Doom: The Dark Ages. The developers took the same road, but at a much different speed. An attempt at creating a game that will try to redefine the genre again. This time, as you are no longer able to dash, the gameplay loop focuses on parrying instead. Both slight and major changes to your arsenal are applied. Glory kills take a different form as they become less frequent than how they were in Doom Eternal. The gameplay doesn't focus on platforming anymore. This time, Doomguy is just heavy. So heavy that he could kill a large horde of enemies just by landing from high ground. Instead of a pure sci-fi fantasy, this time it's more of a medieval setting with a few sci-fi elements. So does that mean that Doom: The Dark Ages lacks the fundamental elements of what made Doom Eternal fun? Or that we should just give it time before it redefines the genre and parrying and striking back with a flail becomes the norm? Can Doom: The Dark Ages even keep up with Doom Eternal? Or quite simply, under such attempts at constantly trying to redefine their genre, what makes a Doom game? While attempting to understand the concept of game amusement theoretically, I went to check an interesting book called A Theory of Fun Game Design by Raph Koster. Koster is a prominent game designer, involved in multiple projects ranging from writing, art, soundtrack, programming, and much more. He is actually the creative director of Star Wars Galaxies. As for his book, many praise it to be as one of the most valuable resources in game design theory. Link in the description if you wish to check it out. Raph Koster deals with what makes a game fun. More importantly, he delves into what creates fun, what sustains it, and how it eventually dies as part of the game's cycle. Koster links fun to learning. The cycle of learning is what manages to sustain the fun element. Achieving the end result of the learning process will eventually lead to boredom. Koster clearly advocates that a game's purpose eventually is to achieve boredom. As he says, those of us who want games to be fun are fighting a losing battle against the human brain because fun is a process and routine is its destination. Eventually you will grow bored with the game, even if you replay it multiple times. Routine hits and the fun element is sucked out of it. You may find yourself revisiting it, trying to relive your first playthrough, but it can never feel the same. People hop into remasters and remakes because developers promise an element of novelty in their games, even when it's just visual. You see, the path towards reaching that state of boredom in the first place is the fun element. For example, if a game reveals all of its cards at the beginning, failing to renew the cycle of learning, boredom is achieved too early, and thus the game will not be fun, which is why Doom Eternal couldn't have been longer than it was. At the same time, not revealing all of its game mechanics from the start and prolonging so will lead to boredom as well. The point is to find that sweet spot where the player is to be left expecting something with each milestone achieved throughout the run. This is exactly why developers release updates and DLCs, not just to fix the game, but to invite you back in an attempt to create the cycle again. even if the changes are minor. In my opinion, part of the reason why It Takes Two was such an amazing game was because each level was like a whole different game on its own, introducing a distinct cycle of learning that can only be overcome by its end. Now, in what way can any of this be applicable to Doom? In a lot of ways, actually. When it comes to Doom the Dark Ages, the game takes its time in introducing its mechanics. The introduction of weapons and weapon modes are spaced out throughout the levels. Each introduction of a weapon is followed by a quick encounter that encourages the use of that specific weapon. Same as Doom Eternal. Each weapon has got a set of upgrades. This time you can do it by using a new set of currency, consisting of gold, rubies, and redstones. Instead of doing it through the menu, you can only upgrade your weapons at the Sentinel Shrines. Your shield has got 4 types of runes that can be activated once you execute a parry. You can use it to rush towards enemies, which is what I saw as an aggressive dash mechanic. But you would have to find a target to do that, and the mechanic would have to be refilled. Your shield is also important to break in armor, enemy shields, and to do some low-level platforming and puzzle solving. You can unlock 3 main melee weapons, each with their own benefits, set of upgrades, and refill time. It's important to notice that the game doesn't introduce all of its weapons during the first few hours for a purpose. The player would have to readjust their playstyle with every new discovery within their arsenal. The element of unpredictability lies in the introduction of enemy types as well. Usually harder enemies would be fought with less support when encountered for the first time, and their attack frames would be slightly different than the others. The game gives you the chance to readjust your playstyle to their movement, and then those same enemies will become part of the regular enemy hordes you fight in later levels. The game preps you for harder challenges, and makes what seemed like an effortful encounter at first later become trivial and easy as you grow accustomed to it. With that said, the game's difficulty lies in the importance of learning the parry mechanic in comparison to what you have been adjusted to while playing Doom Eternal. Returning enemies launch the same attacks at you from the previous game, but this time, as you cannot dash your way out of it, those attacks are parryable. This could make the game too easy at times, even at a higher difficulty and at a shorter window for parries. Yet this was somehow compensated for when the late game hordes include a larger variety of enemy attacks all at the same time. Besides, I didn't necessarily feel as obliged to switch between weapons as it was the case in Doom Eternal. However, I felt that the weapon switching can be described as encouraged in Doom the Dark Ages because it made the gameplay stylish and much more fun. When it comes to the Atlan and Dragon parts, I didn't necessarily hate them. I saw their purpose as given as a break from the rest of the game. Doom the Dark Ages, much like Doom Eternal, can be quite stressful at times. People who have played the game know that you would have to remain focused for the entirety of its regular combat loop. And because those parts are relatively easy, I saw them as a way to have fun with the game on an easier tone without messing around with the general difficulty. You can compare it to the moment you got to control the Revenant in Doom Eternal. Now, if you pay close attention, Doom the Dark Ages' cycle of learning is very similar to that of Doom Eternal. This was the reason why Doom Eternal was loved in the first place. It managed to sustain the fun all the way to the end and beyond. The major difference is that this time the gameplay mechanics that you would have to master are simply different. You would also say that the difference in the number of levels is an important factor as well, which makes it more likely that you could fall into boredom while playing Doom the Dark Ages than when playing Doom Eternal. With that said, there is an obvious effort on the developer's side to keep the cycle as consistent as possible by introducing new areas and focusing on delivering amazing story moments, as the narrative this time is delivered at a much slower pace. So, aside from the changes in gameplay, what exactly was the issue with the game's reception? Multiple issues actually. A lot of people believe that the $70 price tag is outrageous given what the game is offering. Also, a lot of people were not satisfied with the fact that Doom the Dark Ages elevated the requirements for anyone counting on optimization. The absence of Mick Gordon's music was quite impactful as well, and when you know the reason why Mick is absent, you cannot exactly appreciate its software, and by default you may not appreciate either the game or the alternative composer they brought instead. But still, the game is simply awesome. It's a fun gameplay loop that does not reveal all of its cards from the first few hours, that allows you to unleash once you master all of the skills, facing odds that would look impossible at first glance, and which would allow you to feel immense satisfaction once you do. I just wish that the developers would address the balancing issues in the game. and put more emphasis on weapon switching within the upcoming DLC. Maybe introduce some interesting platforming mechanics as well. Honestly, I believe that Doom the Dark Ages may as well get to define what makes a Doom game for years to come, the same way that Doom Eternal did. The industry needs more people who are willing to experiment with new ideas while trying to stay true to the core identity of the IP. But hey, what's your take on this? What are your hopes for the series? How far do you think the developers will go to redefine the genre again? Tell me about it in the comments. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. Don't forget to press like and subscribe for more content. Happy slaying!